Well, hey there, and welcome to episode number 41 of Metal Raps. My name is Mitch Joel, and as always, we are joined by Talking Metal's Mark Strigl. Mark, how's it going?
I'm great, Mitch. How you doing?
Awesome. And of course, we are also with Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon's Mitch Lafon.
Yes. Always here and always a pleasure to be here.
Well, this is a special time of the year, I think, and it's a special time of the year because I feel like it is the summer of Guns N' Roses. We've got a band that has gone out on the road with a whole bunch of excitement, energy, especially coming off of last summer where not only was there the real sort of launch of this reunion or Not in This Lifetime, but we also had Axl pulling double duty on AC/DC, which for me was one of the better live shows I saw last year. And then here we are with this band doing 30 plus songs at every stadium-ish show they're playing. They just came off of doing an amazing private party / event for Sirius XM Radio where they played live at the Apollo Theater. And I don't know if you guys caught that. It was phenomenal. There's a great video of that floating around. And of course, we can't forget the fact that it's Appetite for Destruction's 30th anniversary. Thank you for making me feel like the oldest fart in the world. But here we sit. What do you think? Is this the summer of Guns N' Roses? Mitch Lafon?
Yes, of course. It's anytime the band is active, it will be the summer of, the winter of, the spring of. Guns N' Roses is just one of those bands that is above and beyond everything else that's in the rock world, everything else that's going on. Doesn't matter if hip hop is outselling rock or what. Guns N' Roses is that next level. It's sort of like Paul McCartney or U2. Doesn't matter what the current trends are. If they're active, it is the year of Guns N' Roses. Period. End of story. And, Appetite for Destruction, 30th anniversary. It is absolutely wonderful. And I remember looking back in Metal Edge. Yes, Metal Edge. And they said, here is the band of the future. And I was like, no, they're not. Well, gladly proven wrong 30 years later.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, as far as it being the summer of Guns N' Roses, yeah, sure. I mean, last summer probably could have been the summer of Guns N' Roses too. But for me, I mean, they were playing the stadiums and stuff. So whenever, like Mitch said, whenever they're out there, it's awesome. I do reflect back on that record 30 years ago and just remember what a special record it was, and hearing it for the first time. I loved it. I was a hard rock guy. I was a metal guy at that time. But the thing I remember that there's certain records from the hard rock metal world that I would see that would reach outside of the metal hard rock world, and that was one of them. And Metallica was another band that put out records like that. Where I'd see the jocks on the football team liking what they're doing, and Van Halen, but Guns N' Roses, that first record, I specifically remember I worked in a record store when it came out, and this dad, who was probably 33, coming in with his 13-year-old kid, and he bought 2 copies of it on cassette. And I was like, oh, why are you buying 2 copies? And he was like, well, one for me, one for him. And, that really dawned on me because that wasn't, the latest Faster Pussycat or whatever was not happening with their record, or even though the latest Slaughter record or whatever a year or two later, that didn't happen with those kinds of records. But with Appetite for Destruction, there was something special there that it was reaching people who were into the Stones, and it was reaching people who were into Anthrax, and it was reaching people who were into possibly Richard Marx at that time, so there was something really special about that record. Not to mention the punk people, I knew punk rockers who liked that record, who were just eating it up, and it was just a really, really special album. I think one of the most special albums ever made, in the history of music, really, at least for me.
Yeah, if there's one album that I shred to death, whether it was cassette or vinyl, I had both, or then even CD, it had to have been Appetite for Destruction. I remember when I first heard about the band, I remember thinking like LA Guns and Guns N' Roses. I'm like, what, is this like one of those cheap knockoff type things? And then when I heard that album, that opening track, the vibe of the band, the other thing is, timing is everything in life. And if you think about what was going on, like in 1987, I was 16 years old. mean, talk about just being primed and ready for an album like that and songs like that, and being such a fan of that genre, really. And I think 1983, the US Festival, I've spoken about it before on the show, was really the sort of cataclysmic moment for me in hard rock. I'd like Kiss before, I'd like some other heavier bands, but seeing that US Festival thing come together in 83. So again, you sort of jump forward to 87, and now I've had, a good 4 or 5 years to really dig in deep and see. And to me, Guns N' Roses was one of the first hard rock bands that wasn't my older brother's, it was mine. And I would, back when he showed me what Shout at the Devil was,
right.
Now I'm showing him Guns N' Roses. And not that it was the sort of beginning of the end of hair metal by any stretch of the imagination, but it really was a sort of divergent genre that suddenly came in, as you said so well, Mark, with the punk and that vibe. But so
in a way, it was like hair metal gone wrong, because in the beginning,
it was everything not perfect.
Yeah, if you look at that first video for Welcome to the Jungle, they had hairspray. They ditched it shortly after that. But they were from that scene, but there was something that just wasn't right about it, and that's what made it so great.
And by 87, hair metal was moving into the cleaner, more not processed, but everything just looked perfect. Even the bands were playing better and shredding more, and this was just so anti that. I mean, again, it's sort of like pivotal moments in music for me was also not even that, but also, I don't know if you guys remember, but they had this sort of live thing up here in Canada. It was shown on Much Music called Live at the Ritz. And it was crazy. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I can look back on it and imagine that this is what it must have been like being a 14 or 15-year-old kid being exposed to the Clash as it was happening, or the Stones as it was happening. And Appetite for Destruction was really just that album for me. And to the
danger,
point where
there was a danger there that just didn't exist in modern rock at that time.
And I'll often talk about, there are other albums I used and abused like that. There was even Slippery When Wet, and again, like Theater of Pain and other albums at the time that now I can't even really listen to. Like, I'm sort of really tired on a lot of those bands. But maybe Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, not so much. But anytime Rocket Queen comes on, or Mr. Brownstone, I'm definitely going to be listening to it and catching it. And I find it amazing that here we are 30 years later, and again, we've gone back and forth on whether or not it's the real band or the whole band. I think having Axl, Duff, and Slash on stage, yes, I miss Izzy, yes, I miss Adler. I still think it gives enough of a vibe from the videos I've seen that's just super exciting. The other part of this sort of moment with Guns N' Roses that I'm finding a little bit curious is there's some floating out there stuff. And the floating out there stuff right now seems to be around the possibility that this band is going to release a new album. I'm praying it's not a Chinese democracy moment here, but Richard Fortus has even sort of made subtle comments in the media somewhat recently, and other media people. I listen a lot to Volume, the All Talk channel on SiriusXM, and there's been a lot of this sort of people are hearing from other members in the band that original material is coming. I get nervous. I don't know. Mitch, what would you think of new GNR material? Is that what you want, or do you just want them to keep milking the old catalog?
Listen, I absolutely want new material, quite frankly. It just depends how they do it. I want them to sound classic. I want them to be Guns N' Roses. I don't want them to start experimenting and start trying to be Tool or Nine Inch Nails or anything. If they can just go back, and I know they can't redo an Appetite for Destruction, but if you can give me some, simple chords and some simple vocals and some simple, like back then, I'm in for it. And if it's a question of going back to some old demos or songs that didn't get it and then updating those, I'll take that too.
I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be closer to Use Your Illusion if they go back. I don't think they're going to go back Appetite style, Mark. What do you think?
I think that, the chance of a new record, honestly, like a full album, to me, after living through Chinese democracy and waiting for that for so many years and the drama that went on with releasing it and recording, I just, to hear Fortus say that, yeah, okay, but I'll believe it when I hear it and see it, when, the leaks start coming out. But it's just like, I have a hard time thinking that that's going to happen. I do think Axl's, I'm not inside by any means, but he does seem like maybe he's happier and in a better mental place than he was back in, the time when he was creating Chinese Democracy. But so maybe that could help things. Maybe his work with AC/DC could help things. But I just, even back with Illusions, they had so many, he didn't want to release those when they were working on those. It's just, I can't get excited about Fortis saying they're working on new music, because it's just, we know how that goes. I mean, it's I think there's a good chance it'll never see the light of day.
Yeah, I'm sort of like in the middle here. Part of me is just like they're playing so well. Yeah, I love great new music from this band for sure. I just sort of historically thinking about what even happened with Use Your Illusion of being 1 and 2, and then this sort of drama that goes into just getting 60 minutes of music out. I don't know if I can endure this anymore. Just play with the songs I love, and I'd be more than happy than dealing with the drama. I totally agree with you guys.
But listen, I'll just put a period on this. I would like to see them recut some of the Chinese Democracy stuff with Slash and Duff playing on them, because they do sound great live. And I'd like to see them maybe take some of the Velvet Revolver stuff and put Axl's voice on it. It's not exactly a new album, maybe just a repackaging of some older songs, but I think that it would work, and I think it would satiate the fans, quite frankly.
I just don't think Axl would ever do that, but I don't disagree.
Well, there was rumors that they were rehearsing a Velvet Revolver song. I don't think it was ever played, but...
No, but it was on the set list. If you look at those early set lists as the potential songs, potential encores, I think it was either Slither or... I think I have to go back.
Fall
but
to
there
Pieces,
are pictures.
Sure.
Maybe if you Google, Guns N' Roses set list 2016 or whatever, and you hit images, there are some on there, and it was one of the songs right up there with Used to Love Her and all these other ones that have eventually made their way into the set list. So it's like, oh, come on, you're missing one of those, audibles. Let's get it in there. But hey, I think it would be great just to get those guys to put a 10-song album together, maybe get a Slash song, and I don't know. I think it would work.
It's funny when we think about what we want to talk about on this show, we sort of do some texting back and forth before we get a chance to chat so we can all get prepped. And I hate to be the person who always bring up the tragedy and the negativity in the world. And it seems, unfortunately, like, again, I don't know if this is just age situational. And here we are again with this insanely sad, crazy story about a great band, Adrenaline Mob. I mean, this is just one of those insane stories where the band had pulled over with their minivan or RV somewhere outside of Gainesville, Florida, because there was a tire blowout. And this massive truck came by and just plowed them, killing bassist David Z, which is insane, and the rest of the band really, really injured, some of them in pretty tough spots. They're now saying that their tour manager, Jane Train, has been hospitalized in Gainesville, Florida, obviously, since the accident took place. She's got something like 60+% of her body has third-degree burns on them. It's just a terrible story, a very tragic story, too. And there's been some GoFundMes set up for members of the band. I mean, they were out on the road supporting their brand new album, which, by the way, is a great album, We the People, on Century Media. And just, talk about terrible, terrible luck. And you guys have done this, your family vacations, driving to see a show, it's late at night, something happens to your car. For this to happen is just, it's just a terrible story.
Yeah, there's absolutely no redeeming value to it. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy. And, it was unfortunately unavoidable. It's not like you predict that your tire is going to blow out, you're going to have any kind of mechanical issues. And, I don't think the truck driver was expecting somebody on this, it's terrible. Now, the only good thing, I guess, is that, Mike Orlando's doing okay. Russell, the singer, has been putting messages on Facebook, updating on his situation. So, but yeah, man, it's tough. It's really a tough one.
And how much more can these guys just be put through?
Endure. Yeah.
Mike Orlando lost his best friend, AJ, AJ Pero from Twisted Sister, who was also in Adrenaline Mob. and now this just so awful. David Z had been on Talking Metal. He was definitely in kind of the New Jersey, New York circle. He had a TV show on a station I used to work at, IFC. Great guy, and just very sad. His brother Paulie, another great guy. Paulie and David, both friends of Paul Stanley's. Just tragic and terrible news. My heart goes out to these guys, and Mike Orlando. I love that guy so much. I see him all the time. I think Mitch, he's friends with your buddy Doug Goldstein. I saw him with Doug when Doug was in New York. I see Mike out at the clubs. He's a supporter of the scene. He produces a lot of the local Jersey bands. He lives right across the bridge there in Staten Island, and he's which is part of New York City, but it almost feels like it's part of New Jersey because it sits south by Jersey, and he's always over in New Jersey. And I shot a VH1 That Metal Gear with him episode back in 2015. Love that guy, and I can't wait to see him and give him a big hug, because God, I mean, how awful.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was out at the NAMM show a couple years ago, the music show, and Mitch had done an introduction to Doug for me, and Doug was hanging with Mike Orlando. Of course, I had known Adrenaline Mob. I'd known the quality of their music and what they were about, especially being a huge Dream Theater fan, and Mike Portnoy played drums in the band when they came out of the gates. And I wound up spending, my 3 or 4 days that I was in Anaheim, just circumstantially ran into Mike all the time, always a smile on his face, always, hey, bud. Remembered who I was, remembered my name, wanted to get to know me, exchanged emails. And I literally was walking by one day at NAMM, and he's just sitting there shredding at some booth. I don't know if it was guitar strings or the guitars that he was endorsing, and just like standing there with my jaw dropped. And he saw me wink over. I mean, it's exactly what you said, Mark. You sort of left there feeling that even though I'd only spent a short time with him, he was a friend, or a guy that would be open to being a friend. And again, you hear stories like this, and you think, it's easy to go, oh, these rock stars in their private jets and their planes and their riders. These are guys who are grinding it out on the road for us every single day in front of not thousands and millions of adoring fans, but sometimes a couple of hundred. Yeah. And again, this wasn't a band that was necessarily.
He's a working class guy. He lives in very middle class neighborhood in Staten Island. He's total working class. He's total professional. He does so much stuff. I mean, I'm thinking just of everything the guy does. Randy Rhoads Remembered tribute. He's a big part of that with like Brian Tishy and those guys. He's so connected and so good, and he should be a lot more famous than he is. And this is the last thing that he and his band should have to endure. Just tragic stuff.
And everybody should go and check out and support this band. Buy the album, check them out, send some love their way on Facebook or Twitter. Before we scatter out of this episode, let's talk about some of the music we've been checking out. Obviously, Adrenaline Mob, We the People will be one of them. Mitch, what else you got?
Well, I'm going to go with two. Full Circle from Great White. I think it's just a fun sort of return to form. And I mentioned it last time.
Which Great White? Is that the one with Terry or the one with Jack Russell?
The one with Terry. Terry Illusse from France. And also, I mentioned it last time, so I'll mention it again. Mark Slaughter, Halfway There. It is really a solid rock record. I don't want to say surprising because that sounds insulting, but I put it on. I was like, okay, it's just going to be. And it was just above and beyond. It really, he really just nailed it on this one.
Mark, what have you been checking out?
There's a great punk rock band called Barbed Wire Dolls, and they have a new record out called Rub My Mind. This was recorded out in the deserts out by Joshua Tree there at the what do they call it? I forget the studio, this Queens of the Stone Age studio out there, Ranch del something or another.
I don't know the name, but
Rancho del Lalo or something. But yeah, it's a great stuff. And these guys were signed by Lemmy to the Motorhead record label before Lemmy passed on. They're tight with the Eagles of Death Metal guys. So they have a really unique sound for a punk rock band. And Pin Dahl, the guitar player, great guy. And he's putting out some great music with this band, Barbed Wire Dolls. Again, the record, which you got to kind of dig around for it a little bit. It's not on all platforms, but dig around for it. You'll find it. Rub My Mind by Barbed Wire Dolls.
Had not heard of them, but punk rock meets desert rock means I'm going to check it out. That's very cool. My two for this week, one of them we talked about in the last episode, but River Dogs, California. Huge fan of this band, huge fan of their debut. Still listen to that debut as if it were a brand new release, which was released, I don't even know how many years ago that was. New album is called California. Rob Lamont, just big shout out to him, not because he is now or has been living in Canada or is a Canadian forever, but one of the most purest, rockiest voices going. I just love this guy's voice. A lot of people know River Dogs because it's Viv Campbell from Dio and Def Leppard. For me, it's all about Rob Lamont. Guy's amazing. And I've also been checking out, I'm on the fence. I'm not sure if I love it or I just was in desperate need of hearing that type of music, but Mr. Big's latest, Defy Gravity, I can be a shredder geek just like the rest of them, and everyone knows I've got that bass podcast groove, so anytime Billy Sheehan's going to be running up and down the frets and necks of a bass, I'm all in. So Mr. Big's latest, Defy Gravity. If you want to check me out, you can always just Google Mitch Joel or check me out at Mitch Joel on Twitter. Mark, let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, just check me out on Facebook. Just search my name. It's Mark with a K, and the last name is Strigl. There's also a Talking Metal Facebook page, which if you would like that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
That's awesome. And Mitch Lafon, where can we find you?
Yes, the new Podcast One app, of course. You can look up Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Twitter at Mitch Lafon, MITCHLAFON. And then I guess just Google. That's a lot easier. Just Google the name. There's not a lot of Mitch Lafons out there, fortunately.
And we'll be back really soon with episode number 42 of Metal Raps. We'll see you all soon.